Welcome to 2019. We're going to check out our first timeline of the year, and we're going to go big. We're going to check out the history of Dr. Hannibal Lecter. That's right, we're going to figure out the timeline of the good doctor by looking at some Oscar-winning films and some not-so-Oscar-winning films. And we're going to eat up his timeline with a nice Chianti. So, Hannibal first appeared on screen back in 1986 in Manhunter, directed by Michael Mann. We meet Will Graham, an FBI agent who comes out of retirement to help track a serial killer, convinced by his boss, Jack Crawford. The killer gets the nickname of the Tooth Fairy, and we find out that Will caught Hannibal Lecter 3 years ago, and when he goes to visit him for help, he looks a lot like William Stryker. Will gets a telegram dated September 1986, so that's our year here, so he caught Lecter back in 83. I mean, it's definitely the 80s. Look at this outfit. We meet Chilton, head of Lecter's asylum, and sleazy reporter Freddy, who gets taken out by the Tooth Fairy, finally introducing him, and he looks like he'll try to kill RoboCop one day, and he kills Freddy. He meets Reba, I guess before she started the death races, and she's blind, so she can't see that he's a bogus Frankenstein, and they hit it off until he cracks. And he cracks in a big way to this beautiful soundtrack. Ah, the 80s. Will figures out who he is and tries to take him down, and in a tussle, takes him out, and he goes back to his family. Then, in 1991, things got silent with The Silence of the Lambs, which starts off in Virginia, and we meet Clarice Starling, a young FBI agent, who takes a look at these murder photos dated 1989 and 1990, so apparently 1990 is our year since they seem to be fairly recent. She's assigned to interview famous serial killer Hannibal the Cannibal Lecter. Her boss is Jack Crawford again, recast as Stick. Chilton is back, although he's now the rich guy from Deep Rising, and he's still the head of the asylum where Hannibal's held, and he tells of an incident with Lecter and a nurse back in 81, and Lecter says he hasn't seen a woman in 8 years, and if you assume it was the nurse, that makes this 1989, so I guess the nurse wasn't the last time he'd seen a woman. Clarice goes to him, and he's... you know. I could reference Anthony Hopkins from another role he played, but come on. He's Hannibal Lecter. We meet Buffalo Bill as he claims his next victim, while Clarice and Crawford investigate the last one while Frog looks on. Bill talks about the lotion, while Hannibal wears uncomfortable facial gear, and Roger freaking Corman pops in, while Lecter gets even more awkward mouth garb. After some manipulation, he gives Clarice Bill's info and then escapes while Bill makes his woman suit and does the dance. You know the one. Clarice tracks him down and Bill asks the important questions.
Was she a great big fat person?
They face off with Starling taking Bill down, and she graduates and gets a phone call from Lecter eyeing up his next meal. It took 10 years to come back to it with 2001's Hannibal, although Jodie Foster said no thanks. Probably because she read the script. It opens with Barney being interviewed by a mangled-faced Commissioner Gordon and our new Clarice, Julianne Moore. We're told by the news that her previous incident with Hannibal was 10 years ago, so we're set in 2000 here, and we meet FBI agent Crendel, and Starling talks to Mason Verger, a survivor of Hannibal's early attacks. There's footage dated 1988 of Hannibal attacking a nurse, which really goes against what was said in the first one, although I suppose they could have been exaggerating, and this cassette shows that the first movie took place in June of 1990. And we see Hannibal in Italy posing as a professor. And this investigator has a tape dated April of 2000, making that our definite date. Verger's men catch Lecter, but Clarice rescues him, and pigs eat people. Oh yeah, there's man-eating pigs. They eat Mason, and Hannibal kidnaps Clarice and makes Paul eat his own brain, and when she cuffs him, He cuts off his own hand to escape, and he feeds brains to a little kid, and eye roll. Eye close-up. Only 1 year later, in 2002, they went back to Manhunter, remaking it with the book's original title, Red Dragon. It starts in 1980 with Hannibal, definitely not 10 years younger than in Silence, and then we meet Will Graham, who looks more bannery. He shoots Hannibal and arrests him, and we jump to several years later and meet Jack Crawford, who is also a lot older looking than he will be in 1990. Will's wife might sell you weed. He investigates the Tooth Fairy killings and has to enlist Lecter's help to get... And Chilton's back, and we go back to that old cell. Barney's back, and we meet Francis a little bit earlier this time, but this time the actor can't be named, and Beth's more Watsony. And Freddy's more Awesome Hoffman, who is truly missed. His fate's the same in this as in Manhunter, and in fact most of this is the same as Manhunter, just without any of the style. They discover the Tooth Fairy's identity, he kidnaps Beth and shoots himself, but surprise, he faked it, and a week later he shows up at Will's house and they shoot each other a lot. We cut to a little while later as Lecter says he must be healed by now, and it's revealed that Clarice is waiting outside, which finally reveals our timeline since that places this fairly close to the events of Silence of the Lambs. We can probably assume that Will would take a good solid year to heal up, and since we had photos of crime scenes from Buffalo Bill in 1989 and they didn't mention any of that to Will, let's assume that takes place right before that, early 89. So in 2007, 5 years later, they go back to the well to show us Hannibal's youth with another prequel, Hannibal Rising. We're in 1944 at Lecter Castle with baby Hannibal, and since Hannibal told us his birth year was 1939, he'd be 5 or 6 years old here, which doesn't totally seem right. And his parents are killed in the war, and he and his sister are held captive, and we jump to 8 years later, so 1952, and Hannibal is, I guess, 13 or 14 here? Not so much. He goes to France and stays with his aunt, gets a mask that's a really coincidental foreshadowing, and makes his first kill in Discount Jack Black. McNulty's on the case, and it's revealed that the men killed and ate his little sister, and one is still around. He catches him and tortures and kills him to find the location of the others and starts to get revenge. His aunt/lover, yeah, it's weird, is kidnapped and he kills dudes, and we get action hero Hannibal, which is, I guess, what somebody thought is what we wanted, and he kills the lizard, fakes his death, and heads to America. Although that was it for the film series, we did see Hannibal again on television, which actually premiered in 2013, featuring the amazing Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal and Hugh Dancy as Will Graham. Also featured Lawrence Fishburne as Jack Crawford, and actually focused on a lot of the interplay between Will and Hannibal, and was phenomenal. I recommend checking it out highly. Very, very, very bummed out that it actually got canceled. It did actually get to the events of Red Dragon as well too, and it's just great. Absolutely check this series out. I did want to take a brief point out to mention something. So, the difference in quality between Hannibal and Silence of the Lambs was probably one of the biggest drop-offs I've ever seen in a film series. I consider Silence of the Lambs to be one of the great classic films, and other films that I consider to be classics did not have nearly as big of a drop-off. As I've said in my Jaws video, I consider Jaws 2 to be about a 50% drop in quality from the first one. I consider Psycho to be a all-time classic of horror. Same thing, Psycho 2 was only about a 50% drop-off in quality. Even when you go into other worlds, for instance Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I loved the second one, even though it was a different type of film, it's still, I'd say, only probably a 30% drop-off in quality there, because I love that second one. The only ones I could really think of with this steep of a drop-off would be maybe The Exorcist. The Exorcist is an all-time classic, fantastic horror film. Second movie, huge drop off in quality, although it is extremely entertaining because it's just so darn stupid and funny that I actually really enjoy it, and I consider it to be about a good 85% drop in quality. Silence of the Lambs, however, again, Oscar-winning film. Hannibal comes out, not so. Terrible movie. Poor execution all around. It's painfully dull. It's everything about Hannibal that you don't want to see Hannibal. Jodie Foster's not involved. Nothing of quality is involved. The only thing that's enjoyable is probably Gary Oldman's performance, which is actually, he seems to be the only one that's having a good time. I consider it to be about a good 90% drop in quality. If any of you guys can think of a bigger drop off in quality in the horror realm, please let me know, because I can't think of it. So there you have it. It's 5 movies and a TV show that tie together, I guess okay. I mean, Manhunter's not connected, but you know, I guess if you don't want to watch it and you just want to watch the Anthony Hopkins series, you can skip that one. But I highly prefer that one to Red Dragon. Red Dragon's, the story is good. It's just really told very dull. Story's told better in Manhunter, I think, because it's although very 80s-ish, it's beautiful. I really enjoy Manhunter. It's great. Hannibal, I thought was terrible. Red Dragon's so-so. Hannibal Rising, it's terrible. But I mean, the continuity does actually tie in fairly well, so I won't criticize it for that. But well, that's about it for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe to all the good stuff. I've got a lot of great stuff planned for this year, guys. I hope you're ready for some good stuff. Another couple weeks, we'll have some great videos coming for you. In the meantime, please check out the Patreon page, and please thank you to my patrons. You guys are pretty awesome. Thanks for helping out. And in the meantime, I'll see you in another couple weeks for another great video. Thanks.